Okay, this is a really quick video. Pressure, what is it? What creates it? Okay, now here's a balloon. Now you know when you put air in a balloon, it gets bigger. Well, that's pressure. Now, pressure is the force exerted on the surface of the balloon. That's what pressure is. What creates it? Molecules of air in here are getting crowded, and they're more crowded than they are outside the balloon. Now, these molecules of air are moving, and guess what? They bounce off the side of the balloon. When they hit the side of the balloon, it creates pressure. That's why the balloon sticks out. The molecules of air are hitting the edge of the balloon and bouncing off of it. They're also bouncing off of each other too. But the more crowded it gets in the balloon, or the faster these things start moving, the more pressure you will see on the balloon. And if it's flexible, then the bigger the balloon will get. But this is what pressure is. Now, wait a minute. You look on your tables, on page 1, you'll see that when we talk about pressure, or the standard pressure in the room, we can call that 1 atmosphere, or we could call the standard pressure in the room 101.3 kilopascals, or we could call the standard pressure in the room 760 millimeters of mercury. They're all the same thing. It just depends on what instrument we're using. If we're using an old school tube with some mercury in it, and let's say it's got a little pool of mercury down here, and this is a glass tube like an old thermometer, it will push mercury up the tube. And if we have a standard unit and it pushes it up here 76 centimeters or 760 millimeters high up the little tube, then that would be 760 millimeters of mercury. If it's pressed up the little tube that far, that would be like saying we're at 1 atmosphere of pressure. Okay? Other units that we use are called kilopascals. Okay? And if we use kilopascals, that's 101.3. So if I had just a little computer in my hand and it was reading the pressure in the room and it said 1 atmosphere, I could hit a button right here and change it to kPAs, and then it would just all of a sudden on the screen say 101.3. See, it's the same thing, just in new units. And if I hit the button again to see what the units were in millimeters of mercury, it'd just say 760. So all of these three things mean the same amount of pressure. An atmosphere, 101.3 kilopascals, or 760 millimeters of mercury. It's just 3 different ways of measuring the same thing. Let's take a look at a pressure change experiment that's fun. And what we have in this little glass cylinder is a little marshmallow man. Now these marshmallows are made at 1 atmosphere pressure in the marshmallow factory. If you look, the top of the flask is open, so the pressure inside this chamber is exactly like the pressure in the room. Now we've got a little setup here that when water flows down this tube, it creates a suction right here. So listen. So we're trying to create a low pressure inside of this flask. But we can't because there's not a cap on the flask, right? So let's cap up that flask. Okay. So now we've got a little cap on. That cap's not straight. Now we have a cap on this. So when water goes through this tube, it's going to pull the air with it. And it's going to make a low pressure inside of this flask. What do you think is going to happen to our marshmallow man if the pressure in this chamber becomes lower? Let's see. Well, the Marshmallow Man's getting bigger. He's getting torn apart. Now, Mr. Spear's going to crack the top on it, and we're going to shove the pressure right back on him real quick, just for the fun of it. 3, 2, 1. Hi-oh! And that's what happened when the pressure was put right back on him. And that's a pretty cool experiment.